Thanks a lot, everybody. I had to say that when I got a phone call on Thursday evening, I was a little bit apprehensive. I think it went something like, "You'll be speaking at a pub in London." Now, bear in mind, I'm from Manchester. How many of you have been drinking in Manchester before? Yeah, okay, we've got a couple of lucky people there. You know, I was brought up in a town that the motto when you went out drinking was, if you're old enough to drink, you're old enough to take a beating. And most of the time it was like, you'd walk into the bar and the music would stop and everybody would turn around and look at you if you're a stranger, so you can imagine what the thoughts were going through my head coming down here. Obviously I'm going to share quite a personal story with you, so that was another reason. I'll take you back right to the very beginning of my story, and hopefully 10 minutes will be enough to get through it, but if not I'll have to apologise later. So I was born in Salford, and at the age of 5 I moved to former cotton milling town on the outskirts of Manchester, which it didn't have many opportunity, let's say, and forward progressive thinking like you people here tonight, you amazing people, it just didn't exist. I was the eldest of three brothers, sorry, so I've got a middle brother and a younger brother, and two fantastic parents. Unfortunately, at the age of 2-year-old, my middle brother was affected by a tragedy. He was involved in an accident which today is called sudden infant death syndrome, or cot death syndrome. Unfortunately, to the fantastic work by the doctors, they managed to resuscitate him after a short period of time. That resuscitation resulted in my brother having profound learning difficulties, brain damage, he was blind, and he couldn't communicate in a way that we would perceive as normal. Obviously, my parents suffered what amazing pain. I can't even begin to understand what they felt. And from the pain, the result of that, the motivation that they showed to ensure that my brother had a normal life, or as normal as possible, that he could, receive the medical care that he needed, he could go to the school that he needed, that he could even just receive dental care or support from whoever it might be. They showed a great resilience and a great desire and a will that I took away with me. Now, the beauty of this story, and it is a beautiful story, is that my brother managed to grow up and live an amazing life. Due to the attention of my mum, my father, he grew up, he lived on his own, he lives on his own now, he's got an allotment, he goes climbing, he goes to the pub, he connects with people, all the things that people never thought he'd be able to do. And my mother, she is just a phenomenal lady. She took the pain that she got from this, and she went to university at the age of 33 and achieved a first in social care as a mature student. I think she was one of the only people to do that in the year at the time in the whole of the country. So the reason I'm telling you this is just to ground in some of the things that we've been through as a family and what I've been through, because when you go through something like that, it's quite easy to feel a low self-worth. We all know children can be cruel. We all know that when you go to school, people finger point and they look at you. And I went through that, and my self-worth suffered because of it. At the age of 7, and this is a good one, by the way, at the age of 7, my next door neighbour just started karate, and I was watching Karate Kid, the 1986 version or whatever it might be, with Mr. Miyagi and the wax on, wax off moment. Yeah, I was so interested in that film. I wanted to be the guy that won the competition, with a crane kick at the end. And when I saw that film and my next door neighbour was doing karate, I decided to go and join karate. I trained for 8 years. I was dedicated. I think I trained 5 nights a week, and I never competed. It got to the point when I was in school at the age of 13, 14, and my best friend in school at the time was coming away from competitions with lots of trophies. Everybody was asking him how great he was always in the newspaper, so I decided to move clubs. I stepped out of my comfort zone. I went to the new club and I competed. I got kicked in the head a million times, I got punched in the face, I went home with bloody noses, I had black eyes, and I went home in tears because I wasn't winning, I wasn't taking trophies home most of the time. My parents sent me back all the time. They refused to allow me to give in. I went back, I trained, and I hit a couple of low points at that time for a 14-year-old. Remember, we were talking about self-worth. There was a point where I got beat by my friend in school in the final of a competition, and I was ashamed to go in school the next day. I was that embarrassed that my friend had beaten me because I wanted to win. And the second one was when everybody else had got selected for a certain event and I didn't get selected. And it was painful for me because obviously I was back to the point where children in the playground were finger pointing at my brother and looking at me and judging me. At that point I could have given up. I didn't. I decided I was going to become the best. I decided I was going to train every single day of the week. And I decided that I'd be the best in the club, the best in the association and the best in the country. And it just so happened that the English Championships fell on my 16th birthday. And this is the senior English Championships, this is not the juniors. Got in the car, went over to Leeds. I was heavily into sports nutrition at the time, so I had my Mars bar and my Lucozade on the way. And when I got there, I fought everybody. I beat all comers. Got to the final. I got to the final and I'm stood there, and if you can remember the Karate Kid film where you had the bad guys and they were all, doing what they were, these guys were staring at me and they were laughing at me. And I felt small, but I was certain. I was certain I was going to win. I went on the mat and I left everything on there. There was no defeating me. I beat him, I was victorious. I beat the current European champion at the time. He had no chance. And you'd think that an event like that will catalyse me onto greater successes. It didn't. The age of 17, having broken up with my first girlfriend at the time, a girl who was, we had a photograph together at the age of 3 and I was kissing her on the cheek like you do as a kid. We broke up and I decided I'd commit suicide. I decided that I'd go home and I'd find some tablets in the kitchen and I'd take the tablets and commit an overdose. And I woke up in hospital in a heart ward, or whatever the ward's called. I woke up in the hospital surrounded by like 50-year-old men who said who were dying. And bypass operations. And the doctor said to me, you're that healthy, you're fortunate, you're that healthy that you would have died otherwise. I mean, it was a catastrophic moment for me, and I carried a lot of shame around for years with it. Having done that, at the age of 21, I had a fantastic moment. My son was born. My son, the guy, I love him, is my reason for living. But that moment again turned into shame. I broke up with his mother and fell into taking recreational drugs at the weekend and just going out to party all the time. I did this for 4 years and I lost contact with him. I couldn't see him. I must have seen him maybe 4 times in a year at one point. And at the age of 27, having not seen him and having the interest of an older woman who saw the potential in me for making money, I decided enough was enough. The spark was lit in me. Again, I won't be beat. And I started a business, New Year's Eve 2008 in my bedroom. 5 years later I was a millionaire. I just showed that same spirit that I had back as a child to win the English Championships. And I split with a woman who was who was with me, who had saw the potential. And at that point, I went out, I started spending money. I think the most I made in a week's period was £500,000. Now you imagine a 29-year-old who makes £500,000 in a week. I was walking around like Don Corleone. I was just so driven by the ego. It was unbelievable. I was buying £100,000 cars, spending £20,000 on watches. I think I walked into the Mercedes garage in my tracksuit and my trainers, and they turned around and said, "Sorry, you can't get credit." I was like, "I'll pay for it cash." And it was just that moment out of the movies, and the business failed. Obviously it was going to fail. It was a flawed plan. I was the flaw. My ego was driving me so hard that there was just no way it could. And I'm sat in a room one night in the house, the curtains are closed, and I'm like, surely there's got to be more to life than this. Have you ever been there? Surely there's got to be more than life than this. There was. I met my girlfriend, my current girlfriend. She inspired me. She inspired me so much. I bought her tickets to go to Paris before I even asked her out. I was so confident that she was coming. And one day I'm sat in the car, we've been arguing because I was in debt. I'm on the verge of bankruptcy. My company's gone, and the radio's playing some disc, and it's a guy talking. I'm like, who's this arsehole? Turn that shit off. It was Tony Robbins. I bought a UPW ticket, and I went to Tony Robbins and UPW last year, and he said something. He said, success without fulfillment is failure. That was my defining moment. That changed everything for me. I decided to make changes in my life. I got up one day and I started to think that, and I will say sorry for running over, by the way, but I need to. So I started to, look at the way that I live my life. I made a conscious decision to change, and one of those decisions was to look at the significance that I placed on my bank account, and instead of placing that significance on my bank account, placing significance on the love that I gave to people, and value myself on how much love I gave to people. Also the way that I looked at failure, that failure isn't all about failing. The only failure we've got is when we don't try. That every single one of us has got the ability to do whatever we want to do, but most of us are too afraid to get out there and give it a go. Then the last thing was the certainty. The certainty that life, no matter what it does, if you think back to what happened with my mum, if you think back to what happened with me, if you think back to every step along the way, if I hadn't have done that, I could have been stood in front of you now talking about it to inspire you. I'm certain that everything in life is guiding you to where you need to be. And that certainty that I carry with me today is the certainty that will carry me further, and it'll probably carry you all further if you just embrace it. The last thing is that, after all of this, I'm so proud of where I've come to, because the experiences that I've had and the pain and suffering that I've had allow me to empathise with any single person. I've been through probably every single circumstance that you can think of, apart from, there's a couple of others, but the pain of that, and it allows me to guide people who are potentially in that same position and make a difference to them. And that was the purpose of my life from Tony Robbins coming back. The last thing, I've shared a lot of things with you, things that are really personal, and I'm sure that every single one of us has been there. And if you are, or you have been, I just ask yourself to give you a moment of love, give yourself a moment of love, and reach out to everybody else, because at the end of the day, the only value that we've got that really exists at the end is each other. And I thank you for listening to me.